Hello, everyone. You're listening to Glitter and Gold, the original Steps podcast. We are the first podcast dedicated to discussing and dissecting the legacy of Steps, the UK's biggest mixed gender pop group of all time. My name is Shane, and I'm joined by my two cool mums for this episode, Scott and Brad. How you been, boys?
Happy New Year. I feel like we could still say that. I mean, it's February, but
nah, I think that's past.
It's gone.
The moment's gone.
The moment's gone. But Happy New Year anyway. Nice to see you both and back doing it again.
Yes, it's going to be such a great year. We've already kind of got a few things in the works that we're very, very excited about.
Mm-hmm. Very, very excited about. And the three of us had a little fun night the other night. Ribbon twirling with Sophie down the road, which was kind of nice to catch up in person because I haven't seen you both for a little while, so that was good.
She was so good.
It was so much fun, wasn't it?
So good.
It was so
I could almost pretend like I was at the O2 waiting for her to open for Steps.
That's right.
Always a Steps connection.
Always a Steps connection. I was thinking about that. I was like, where have I seen Sophie? I've seen her at like some clubs. I've seen her at the Greyhound here in Melbourne, which is a RIP gay club. I've seen her at a club in Sydney. And then, I've seen Sophie at the O2 over for Steps. So that was pretty good too.
But you have not seen Soph until Friday up close and... Well, actually, no, we have seen her up close and personal. But
yeah.
At this gig, at the end, she goes and stands somewhere in the audience and sings completely a cappella, no microphone, and the whole audience has to be quiet. And she ended up standing right where we were sitting in the booths. And that was a very special moment.
Speaking of cool things, Faye has actually announced that she's going on tour with Mean Girls, the musical. She's going to be playing Mrs. Norbury and the ultimate cool mum, Mrs. George, and that's going from Manchester to Blackpool.
I'm so excited because I think she's going to be the best Mrs. George. She did that little YouTube video and she looks like she is ready to slay.
Also, to do 3 characters, like, how do you... mentally like switch from one to the other, like that is a lot of work.
That's what I was going to say. The other one she's playing is Katie's mum as well, which is what's that scene where she's in the movie and she's like holds up the vase and she's like, who are you? when Lindsay Lohan puts the vase in the cupboard.
I mean, I'm just excited for that, a clip of Faye doing that, famous scene with the video camera. That alone is going to be worth it.
That's also going to be a 6-month tour. So Faye's going to be booked and busy, 6 months on the road. But the others aren't too far behind. We've got Claire, who's done a few of her Butlins Back to the 2000s gigs. And then H was on The One Show talking about Beryl Cook. I don't know if either of you have heard of Beryl Cook. I don't know if she's, our generation. And Lee's announced he's going to have another bubba.
Yeah, I did see that. That was so nice.
Congrats to Lee and Kerry. That's awesome news.
Scott, I feel like you're going to be very excited.
Oh my God. Everyone that listens to this must know by now that I'm a TST stan and I am still pitching for the TST episode. It keeps going up the spreadsheet, but we haven't got around to it yet. But the 2 singles, Heart and Soul and Baby I Love You, are finally on Spotify. I have been streaming the shit out of them because I just love those songs. Like, I always can never tell Claire's feelings about TSD, if she loves it, if she hates it. But look, I reckon if it wasn't for TSD, she may not be, Steps may never have happened. Who knows what could have happened? So I feel like it all happens for a reason. And that was the beginning of her journey. And the songs like Eurodance trash, but I love it. And I'm so happy they're on streaming.
If there wasn't TSD, we wouldn't have Claire from Steps.
Exactly.
So,
right.
It's all led to this point.
So jump on Spotify and go stream.
Speaking of things that people should be jumping on, the musical's still happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're in February. It's ending in May, but it's returned from its winter break with a new Patricia. Coronation Street, Sally Ann Matthews has slotted seamlessly into the role. And the musical has been nominated for Best New Musical on the 2026 What's On Stage Awards, which is a massive coup for our friend of the pod, Sean Kitchener.
Ooh.
Fingers crossed. Did you boys vote?
Of course.
Absolutely.
Good
Absolutely.
answer.
Mm-hmm. Always. Good answer.
There is no other answer.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I put some random choices in for the other things because at one point I thought you had to vote for every single award.
Oh, I did actually. Did you not have to?
No, you don't have to. You can just, I think, just vote for the awards you want.
Oh, well, some musicals I've never heard of got a vote from me, so thank me later.
Let's get into today's episode. So after we recorded the live at Wembley episode, we got wondering, where did the Steptoons actually come from? We did our research and found our next guest, Christopher Melvin. He created the Steptoons, and in this chat we cover his time at Jive Records and how the Steptoons came to be. Let's have a listen.
Long before YouTube and TikTok, Steps were already ahead of the curve with short-form animated content. The Steptoons, cute cartoon counterparts to the band, played a small but memorable role in the Steps history book, and fans would eagerly obsess over each release, keen to see where our favourite fivesome would end up in their virtual world. Chris Melvin was the creator behind the Steptoons, and the story of how this ended up happening is all thanks to seeing Steps on MTV while on a trip to Amsterdam. And it was because of that moment, along with a lot of talent and a bit of luck, that led Chris to a job at Jive Records. There, he helped build some of the earliest artist websites and multimedia experiences at the dawn of the internet era. As Jive merged into Sony Music, Chris became Vice President of Online and Mobile, working with the likes of Britney Spears, Usher, and Pink. Today, he's the Director of Digital Design and Development at St. Martin's Press in New York, bringing that same creative energy and passion to the world of books. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate you having me on.
That's okay. As we said before the call, this is definitely a subject that we have always been really intrigued about. And so when we want to find the person responsible, we will poke and prod until we get them. So I'm glad that we were able to track you down.
Just before we jumped on this call, you were sort of talking about refamiliarizing yourself with Steps and catching up on all the new stuff and what had happened and so forth. But before I take us back to the 90s, do you have a favorite Step song?
You know, I do. I thought about this. I mean, I kind of love them all. They're great. But one of my favorites is a kind of weird Steps song. I know, and I think Brad might have done it in karaoke. It's Just Like the First Time.
Oh, yes. Oh, wow. What a deep cut.
And you know what's weird is I stumbled across it because it was never released on, it was only on like a UK special version, or maybe even an Australian or Japanese version.
It was the Australian version of Steptacular.
Yes, that had these, and being working at Jive, I had access to all the, there was an international department and they knew me well. I would always go in looking for things. And yeah, I stumbled on the Australian release and it had that extra song, which I believe is sung by Lisa. Yeah, it just connected with me in a really, really good way. But I like them all, like I said.
When you said you worked at Jive, I'm like, oh my God, he's got access to all of the stuff that we used to have to buy on import. And I'm like, wouldn't it be nice to have access to that? So, Chris, if you could take us back to the 90s, right? A place where
dreams were made of.
Dreams were made of.
Life was simpler.
It was.
Life was simpler. What were you doing professionally and how were you introduced to Steps?
I was a freelance designer. I had actually started in graphic design, but in the late 90s, I'm always kind of technical forward. The internet came out and I was really curious about it. So I dove into learning how to build websites and things for the internet. And so I was freelancing, doing work in that field. And it was through that I got into Steps. Is that I was in Amsterdam, as I mentioned, on vacation, and my back was hurting me. So I was stuck in the hotel room. It was like a rainy day. And I was watching MTV Europe, which I always loved because it had so much crazier stuff on it than the American MTV at this point. And I saw this video with these 5 amazing people and these 3 gorgeous girls, which caught my eye. And I believe it was For Better Best Forgotten. And it was a really fun song. I thought, oh, this is really kind of just hit my point. I was like, I was kind of like always a fan of pop music and kind of, never really got enough of it when I was a kid. So this kind of hit me in a good way. And I was like, oh, and then I saw another one. Not sure what it was. I can't remember. But I was like, oh, this is that same band. And I noticed they were on Jive Records. And my roommate at the time worked for a place called Dream Hire, which was an audio rental place that was owned by Zamba, which is the same company that owned Jive Records and a bunch of other stuff. So he was always working with people from Jive. So, I asked him, I said, hey, I saw this group on MTV and they're on Jive. I was wondering if you could, get me some of their work. And he asked me who it was, and I said Steps. And he looked at me kind of strangely and rolled his eyes, but he's like, hey, whatever. And a couple of weeks after we got back, he walked into my room and he just threw a collection of like 4 or 5 CDs on my desk. And he goes, hey, here's that band that you saw in Amsterdam that you were into. And it was like one of the albums and 2 or 3 singles. So I put them in and I played them, and they all sparked the same kind of joy that I had when I first saw them. And I was like, oh, this is great. So I started just playing them over and over again and really getting into it. What happened then was a lot of times with the internet coming out and everything, I'm always looking for a project to work on. And with the internet, I looked to find out if there was anything about Steps, and they really didn't have any kind of presence. Even the label that had a pretty weak website at the time didn't have anything. And there was a couple of fan sites up, of which I used to be on the boards and talk to people with. So I decided I would build a website for them using the technology called Flash, which was back in the early 2000s, was a big internet, medium that allowed for animation and sound. So I built a website using the assets I had with the CDs and things like that, and what I could find on the website. I mean, on the web boards, and I built a website, and it was cool, and I shared it with some of the people in the UK.
What was the website called, out of curiosity? Do you remember?
It was just really a page that was based off of my home site, which was on something called Earthlink back in the day. And then because I didn't have like the money or the wherewithal to purchase a domain to actually host it and all this, so it was just it was just off of an offshoot of my domain that I put it on. And one day my roommate came in and he said, hey, can you put that Steps website on a disk for me, on a floppy disk that'll tell you how old it was. I still have the floppy disk, by the way, and I made a cool label that says Steps and the Steps logo, and it had my contact info on it. I go, what's this for? He goes, I just want to show it to somebody. A couple days later, he said, hey, I gave that disc to the head of new media for Jive, and they were impressed and they want to talk to you about a possible job. And I was like, whoa, okay, like that's cool.
That is a good housemate.
Yeah, exactly. And because I was freelancing at the time, I didn't have benefits, so I was paying for everything myself. So I went in and talked to the guy, and he said, hey, did you build this? How did you build it? I told him, what I was into, and I showed him some of the other websites I was building and things I was building. And he was like, we need someone here to help build websites for, our acts and for the label and stuff like that. Would you be interested? And I was like, well, sure. A couple of weeks later, I started, and I told him, it's funny, when I told him, I said, I'm a huge Steps fan. He goes, yeah, I see that. He goes, it's all good. We have a lot of big artists, and he mentioned Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys, and later NSYNC. So it was right in the heart of pop music at the time. And actually, before my way out was he went into this closet that had all these CDs just in there. And he goes, why don't you go in and take some for yourself, whatever you want. So I just go in there, and I'm like, I took like 7 or 8. I go, is that too much? He's like, no, it's fine. So I was like, okay, cool. So yeah.
I think collectively the three of us would have cleared the whole cupboard.
Oh, no, believe me, over time I did, I went home, and then, a couple weeks later I started, and, he made a point to tell me, he goes, we just don't work on Steps here. We have a lot of other, and I said, no, I totally understand. But they were cool with me being into Steps, and, everyone there was into music in one way or the other, and everyone was into their own thing. So no one really, looked at strange. Although I shared my pictures of my cubicle at the time, and little by little, I started decorating it with like Steph's posters and magazines and pictures, and people all of a sudden would be like, "Oh, this is the Steph's guy." I'm like, okay, whatever.
Before you got employed by Jive, you actually rocked up to the shooting of the US One for Sorrow video. Can you tell us a bit about that experience?
So my roommate came into me and he said, "Hey, I found out, through talking to some people, because they had to rent audio equipment for that shoot from his place of work." So he said to me, "Hey, Steps is coming to the United States and they're shooting a video." And I was like, "Oh my God, where is this happening?" I'm like, "You have to get me in." He's like, I'm not even going to be there." He goes, I can't get you in." He found out it was going to be in this club called Twilo on 23rd Street, which is 2 blocks from my house. So that was pretty convenient in New York City. Yeah, it was great. And I said, "Can you is there any way you could talk to somebody?" He goes, I really don't know the people, in the Jive International Department. He goes, "I told you where it is. It's kind of up to you." And he even said to me, he goes, "You can borrow he had a jacket that said Jive Records on the back. And he goes, "You can borrow my jacket." He goes, "If you get caught or anything," he goes, "You don't know me." You know what I mean? And so I was so geared up for this, and I'm like, I need to be inside. I need to see this. I mean, there's no way that this band I'm so into is shooting a video 2 blocks from my house, and they're not even in their country. I'm like, so I actually, and I hate to say this in a way, but I actually fabricated a fake Jive ID. I'm like, 'cause back then there's no scanning of things. Everything was just like a laminated ID. So I got a picture of myself, and they didn't even have IDs for Jive Records. Like there was no such thing. So I just made up this fake like pass that said I worked for Jive Records.
I love it.
So the day came by, it was pretty warm, so I couldn't wear the jacket because it would have looked kind of weird. So I'm walking down the street towards to the club, and I see all this equipment and outside on the sidewalk. And as I get closer, there's a group of people outside, and then I'm getting closer, and I'm like, "Oh, wait a minute! I think that's the band." And it was Claire and Faye and Lee just standing outside. And I walked up, and I had my CDs with me and stuff, and I said, and a camera, and I said, "Are you Steps?" And they're like, "You know who we are?"
Because this is like right at the beginning before they've even released anything in America, right? So
Oh yeah, no, they're like, they're floored that I know who they are. And I introduce myself and I say, "Hey, I saw you on MTV in Europe. I really love your music." And they were like so excited. They're like, "Oh my God, like this." And I said, "Could you sign this stuff for me?" And they all signed it. And then Lisa came out of the club with Tim Byrne. They introduced me to Lisa. And then they're like, "Hey, Tim, this guy's a fan." And he looks at me, he's like, "How do you know?" And so I told him, and I told him that I do like website stuff. And I said, "The band doesn't really have a good website representation." And he said, "I know that." He goes, "I'm trying to talk to the label about that, but they're slow in moving towards that." So H wasn't there, or he was there, but I didn't see him. I guess I don't know where he was. But I asked them if they would take a picture, and Tim took a couple of pictures of me with the bands, with my arms around them, and joining in, and it like made my day. I was like, "Oh my God!" Like I didn't even have to try to sneak inside, and they hung out there for like 20 minutes just talking to me and just having a great time. It made my day. It was like, and just ramped up my affection for them even higher. I was like, "Oh my God, this is just so amazing." And then it was about probably like a little less than a month later that the website made its way to the record company, and then they called me in for a job.
That's so cool. It's actually so cool.
Yeah, it came from a point of pure joy that that I first discovered them, and then I had this weird meeting that I never thought would happen, that I got to meet them. And then I got a job in the music industry at their record label, which was a huge pivot point in my life because, working at, as you guys can imagine, working in a record It's as cool as it sounds. I mean, it really is.
Especially back then.
Yes, exactly.
I remember when I met like Lisa back in 2010 and when I met other bands, like I remember every single thing we talked about. Do you remember what you guys discussed for that 20 minutes?
Yeah, so I was kind of telling them the story of how I, you know, came upon them, and I asked them what they were doing, here in the States, and they started to talk to me about the One for Sorrow video, and they said we're going to be doing a tour with Britney Spears. And I was like, oh, really? And they mentioned they weren't doing a New York show, but they were doing a Philadelphia show. So that put a little thought in my mind. I was like, oh, well, that's only a couple hours from where I am. So, I said, oh, I'm, working on a website for you guys. And they said, oh, yeah, there's a couple of fan sites, pretty simple, that, know, are out there that we know of. But we're hoping to get better representation. And they were just so excited to be in the U.S. and be in New York. And they were asking me like, do you live? I go, yeah, I live like a couple blocks away. They're like, oh my God, that's so amazing. They were into that. So it was just a real casual conversation back and forth. Like I said, I was kind of like my head was spinning in a way. I didn't have any idea that I would be able to meet them. It was just a real just trying. It's like so
It was meant to be, is what I reckon. Absolutely meant to be.
yeah, it totally was. I feel like the stars were aligning, in my favor for a lot of good things. So it was cool. Like I said, I just really loved the music, and I really wanted to go watch the video shoot, but I kind of felt I was already there, like for taking some of their time because they actually had to break them away from me to say like, hey, you got to go inside and start working and everything. So yeah.
That's so awesome.
Chris, I'm not sure if you're aware of this conspiracy theory that's existed online, but in that US One for Sorry video clip, some people think that Britney Spears was in it. As someone who was on the scene, did you happen to see her?
I did not, and I definitely knew who she was. So I would have known because she was huge at the time. I mean, it was just about the time that Baby One More Time had come out, like a little, probably less than a year before. So she was blowing up. I definitely would have noticed her. I mean, she might have already been inside at the time because there was a bunch of people already inside, but I can't confirm or deny that. If she was there, she would have been in the building where the record label was. And I have a feeling my roommate would have mentioned it like, hey, Brittany's around.
Yeah.
I've been here, because it would, anytime she came by the building, you knew it because it was just buzzed around the floor. It's like, oh, Brittany's here.
Yeah. Chris, so you mentioned before about Philadelphia. So they said they weren't doing a show in New York, but they were doing one in Philadelphia, which was only a couple of hours from you. So you ended up going to that show and meeting them there again. So how did that happen? And sort of tell us that story.
So that's another great story. So the tickets were hard to get because they were opening for Britney Spears and she was really big. So I actually had to scalp a ticket, from a ticket scalper online, which is funny enough. It was a weird site. I had never been there, but I was able to get a ticket, and I still have the stub. I think it's in one of my pictures. But I said to my roommate, I said, "Hey, listen, I'm going to rent a car and drive down to Philadelphia to see Steps open up for Britney Spears." And again, he's shaking his head. He's like, "Whatever." He goes, "Actually." He goes, their tour manager was in my shop today because he's getting equipment for the concert. And he goes, if you want, he goes, I'll ask him if you can get backstage or something. He's a nice guy. I know him. I was like, absolutely, please. So he talked to the guy, and the guy was like, yeah, have your friend come look me up when he's in Philadelphia, and I'll, bring him backstage or whatever. And because I was going through backstage, my friend had a high-8 video camera that I said, hey, can I take this from you so I can, record the show or whatever? He was like, yeah. He goes, you probably, if you go in through the back, you probably won't have a problem getting it in. So I didn't. I had it in like a black case and it was over my shoulder. And I went to the backstage entrance and there was like a few technical people walking around, and I had the technician's name. It was John. And I said, hey, is John around or whatever? They're like, yeah. I said, listen, I'm a friend of Jive from Jive Records, when the audio plays. I said, just tell him that I'm here. And he came out to meet me, really nice guy. And he said, come on back. He goes, I'll take you backstage. He goes, the band's just sitting down and finishing up dinner or something before the show. So I go in, and at this time as well, I had had the pictures taken. I had them developed and I had them blown up into like 8x10s, and I had them with me. And he walks me up to the table and he's like, hey guys, there's somebody here who wants to meet you. And they turn around, they're like, oh my God, you're here too? I'm like, and Faye came up and gave me a huge hug. Like, she was always my favorite in a way because her energy was always so amazing. She was always happy to see me, had a big hug, I mean, they were all happy, but she had extra energy.
Yeah, and still does today.
Yeah,
Like,
she really does.
From what I've seen, it hasn't diminished at all, God bless her, and she looks great. So she gets up, gives me a big hug, and then they introduce me to H. They're like, hey, H, this is the guy we were telling you about, the guy, the one New York fan that found us, And I said, hey, listen, I don't want to interrupt your meal. I just wanted to say hi. I'm here to see the show. I'm really looking forward to seeing you live. Finally, I said, this is like really great. And, I asked them to sign the picture, which they all did, which is for me a great closure. I'm like, now I got the picture and now I got it signed. I'm like, I'm good to go. And like at this time, I still didn't have the job, so I never mentioned that. But so I had my ticket, and it was like up in the balcony. I had the camera on, and I was like, I'm recording this whole show. Like, and so I had the recorder out. No one came by and said anything. You could see the little screen on there. I know I was so lucky to really get away with it, and I still have it, as you've seen.
I was going to say, we should say, I believe it's on your YouTube. There is a YouTube channel that it's on there, so we should link it for the people to watch it.
Look, it was a real basic performance. It was a small venue, but I got to see them live, see all the songs and the dances, and it was great. And then Brittany came out. Well, she came out and introduced them, and then she came out at the end of her show, at the end of their show, and was hanging out with them and stuff. So it was cool. And then I have to be honest, they actually, which is so weird, is they asked me if I could give them a ride to the airport after the show, because they had something was wrong with their transportation and stuff. And
that's hilarious.
Living in New York, I didn't really have a license for a very long time, and I had a rented car. I was not comfortable with it because I'm like,
what if you have an accident and it's like
with steps in the back and like maybe one of them in the front seat next to me? I'm like, I'll be the guy that crashed steps. I'm like, I can't deal with that. So
this would be a very different interview.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I'm sure there would have been a special done about me before then. So I know it is kind of weird. And I was kind of kicking myself, and I'm like, no, look, you met them, you're at the show, just take it for what it is, it's all good.
I love that they asked you for a ride.
Because there's always that level of like you also don't want to overstep a boundary. It's like you want to be able to kind of have that moment.
Keep my distance.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Yeah. That's exactly right. So my instincts were good. They got to the airport obviously fine and everything. But so I recorded the show, and then it was, like I said, a little while, like probably 2 or 3 weeks after that the job offer came, and I was now working at the record company.
And so when you got that job, what was your first day like? Like, you working at this major label, like how you walk in, like how does that feel? And also I know you said that they said Steps wasn't sort of like the only thing they worked on or the main thing, but how did you, I guess, kind of push for that to become one of the main projects that you started working on?
So they, like I said, they knew that I was a big Steps fan, and he even mentioned me like, we're going to work on Steps stuff too, because they were trying to break them in the United States, and that was like a big thing. One of the things they were trying to do. But at the same time, I had to work on a lot of other, like I had to work on Britney Spears because she was really huge at the time.
Poor thing, you had to work on Britney Spears. Oh,
I know, what a drag,
tiny violin.
Right? And it's funny, first day walking in, like so Jive Records is in this really nondescript building on 25th Street. I mean, you would walk by, you would never know there's a record company. And that's because the guy who ran Zomba, Clive Calder, was very down to earth and very lean. Like he kept, like I said, the Dream Hire audio recording and Battery Studios were in the same building. So they kept everything in house. So they didn't have to go anywhere. Everything was in this one building, you know? So I walk in and, I go up to the floor and there's like big posters of, Britney and Backstreet and all these other different artists and gold records on the wall. And the floor I'm on is actually the same floor as A&R is on. So I get to meet all the A&R guys and they're playing all new tracks and, yeah, and I got to know them, just from being on the same floor really well. And they would call me in and be like, "Hey, we're trying a long version of this song. What do you think of it?" And
So you would get to hear things like, I don't know, Bye Bye Bye, or like, Oops, I Did It Again. You were hearing those before anyone else was.
yeah, like that's a funny story. Like I told someone that I heard "Bye Bye Bye" on the radio, and I made a comment that I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm sick of this song." And the person said to me, "This just came out yesterday." And I'm like, "Oh, right. Okay. I hear it 2 or 3 months beforehand," because they were playing the hell. I mean, it was a huge hit, but they were playing it constantly, just trying to tweak it, get it right on the floor. So yeah, you'd never know what you'd be hearing. And everyone was playing music. So you'd hear all this different kind of music walking in and out of the offices of Jive Records. So it was really cool. Like the whole surrounding was just immersed you into. And then I had the keys to that foresaid closet of CDs. So I would be in there just, oh, what do we have in here? Oh, is this in? Oh, has this been released? And then I made very good friends with the international department because Steps, was really coming through the international department. And they would always alert me like, "Hey, we got the Japanese import of this. We got the Australian version of this." And
My God, I
yeah.
dream.
Oh yeah, it totally. I don't take it for granted. I knew
No.
I was like, I never took it for granted. I was like, "Oh, this is awesome," and so I had a great time. So I wanted to work on the Steps website, obviously, but I was working on all the websites. But they said, "Yeah, we need a Steps US based website." So there was a UK website, but the way it worked is territorially, each territory like handled their own web. Like I didn't handle the UK website, I just handled the US website, which was disappointing to me because the UK website had so much more activity from Steps being, a UK based band. But it was fine because I took it upon myself to do the best I could to get them known and, whatever I could do to get the word spread. Um, and then I was working on a bunch of different stuff and just really enjoying the whole scene.
How did the idea of the Steptoons come up? Like, how was the idea of turning Steps into cartoon?
So, I'm working on the website and I'm trying to think of ideas of like, I just want to do more with this band, right? So, I grew up and, cartoons were a big part of my life. There was like the Archies, I don't know, that's like a comic, that they had like music in their cartoons, and Josie and the Pussycat had cartoons. And I was like, Steps being so over the top, like amazing, infectious. And I'm like, I'm like, there should be a cartoon. And it was also at the time when Nickelodeon was really becoming in its own and cartoons were really like a big thing again. And I was like, wow, these guys they could make a cool cartoon. So I, I approached my boss at the time, who funny enough is still a boss of mine at St. Martin's Press. Yeah, he's like a guy I've known for like over 20 years, great guy. He was my boss in at Jive, not the same guy who hired me, but a different guy. And I went into him and I said, "Hey," I said, "I have an idea to make a cartoon version of Steps." And I said, because we could create some cool little flash cartoons to put on the website. And he was like, "Well, if you want to do it," he's like, as long as doesn't, interfere with the rest of your work. He goes, feel free to, do whatever you want. So I was like, all right, I got the green light. Now I'm gonna go. Yeah, my brother-in-law, his name is Rob Roman. He's an amazing illustrator and cartoonist. Like he's been doing this his whole life. And he and I have always connected being artists together. And we would sit down and draw sometimes and just have a lot of fun. We really like the same kind of stuff. So I went to him because he's a lot better at drawing actual cartoons than I am. I could do it, but he's just doing it all the time. So I explained to him what I wanted to do. I brought a bunch of pictures and what the steps were all about and said, could you help me? And he said, sure. We started going back and forth with sketches. Like he would do some sketches and send them to me, and I would tweak them, send them back to him, and he would send them back. And I sent the drawings to you guys. It's like you could kind of see the evolution of how it built from one thought to another. And we got into the idea of the kind of bigger heads and the wide eyes, which is like a kind of a Japanese kind of vibe, and it looked so cute and kind of fit. We got it to a point where I felt it was good, and I said, "This is great." And from there, I can take it because once I had the basic sketches done, I could put it on the computer and tighten it up in a more formal way, and then I could go about building animations and things like that. So in all honesty, like 5, 6, 7, 8 is my least favorite step song. I'm not a fan of line dancing. I just think it's cheesy. I mean, it's weird to say that about a step song. You could probably say
I
that.
mean, I think the band would agree with you there, Chris.
Yeah, they right. You're right. Actually, I found that out later, but yeah, they had the same kind of thoughts. So I thought that was the single that was being pushed in the US. Like that
Oh,
was,
interesting.
yeah, that was the one that they were kind of because line dancing was a thing at the time, and so they were trying to pick up on that. So I realized I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna have to do something for 5, 6, 7, 8. So I should make it country based. So that's when I started bringing them all and to the computer art program. Adobe Illustrator is what I used, and I created nice drawings of them. And then I created all this like cowboy hats and then so also I also my brother-in-law and I we also created monkey character because each cartoonist, if you ever notice, has like a little mascot, or whether it be a dog, a cat, or all these cartoons we knew had a little pet or something that they. And so where I got that was H used to wear these Paul Frank shirts all
Yep.
the time
Yep.
that had the monkey logo. So I was like, oh, and I said, I knew enough UK, verbiage to know, like, we'll call him Cheeky Monkey because that's a cool UK saying. So we drew him along with the characters, and I decided to include him as like H's troublesome little friend. So it was kind of like H's pet was the way it was supposed to be. I worked on the 5, 6, 7, 8, and I got it to, I it's the program I was working in was called Macromedia Flash, and it was a big, a lot of websites started using it because it had sound and movement, but it was a real pain to. It's like step-by-step animation. It's basically like creating cartoon cells. Like each movement is its own frame.
How long did all that take? Like from like when you first sketches to, fruition?
Hours and hours. I mean, but it was again, this is work I love to do. I was so driven that I wanted to do this. So I would work on it on my own in the evenings and stuff. So I'm creating all the little animations and trying to get the eyes to blink and the whole thing, and getting Lee's mouth to mouth the words in the opening. Here it is now, time and again. 5, 6. I decided to do the lyrics with the bouncing boot because there was old cartoons that used to use that method. I think in the old days people would sing along to cartoons in the theaters, and they would show the lyrics, and like a little ball or something would come bouncing around. This is like very old, like I think in the 40s or 50s. But I decided to pick up on that and use the boot to kind of, and plus then people would have the lyrics as they're watching it. I created a little animation. It was pretty easy to just have them there. If you look at it, it's a big loop of them just going back and forth on the fence and then I was like, oh, I'll have the monkey pull H along being roped. And the only hard part was when it gets to that weird disco break, So that's where I came up with the kind of weird black screen with the neon letters and the wave frame and stuff to kind of kick it in for that. I built it, I showed it to my boss and he was like, yeah, he goes, this is great. He goes, oh, he goes, wow. He goes, these came out really good. I actually remember my boss had brought somebody into my cubicle and he was like, hey, can you show Barry here the cartoon you created for them and stuff? And the guy looked at it and he goes, wow, that's really good. Like, good job. I was like, okay, thanks. And I remember saying to my boss, like, laterwards, I'm like, who's that guy you brought in? He's like, oh, that was Barry, the president of Jive Records. And I was
Barry
like,
Weiss.
Wow.
Barry Weiss.
Barry Weiss.
Wow.
Weiss,
And I
sorry.
was like, oh, okay. I'm glad I didn't say anything like crazy or anything. I know I was only there like, probably 6 to 8 months. So I hadn't met anybody. So I was like, oh, and he goes, and he likes, he liked it. He liked what you were doing. So I remember putting it on the website and us promoting it and like sending it out. Like if you signed up for the Steps newsletter, you got something. Hey, there's
An e-card or something. Yeah.
yeah, you got to go and see this thing and stuff like that. And it was doing its job. It was moving along. And I guess like a couple months later, my boss called me into the office and he's like, hey, the group has seen your cartoon and they'd like to use it during the concert. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? He's like, they want to use it for a piece of the concert where they have to do a costume change. So they want you to prepare it for, to be shown on a screen. And I'm just like, oh, okay. So my head's like, whoa.
And should I ask, at this point when you made it, you didn't have to involve them in sort of getting permission or asking, you just sort of did it, they weren't involved in any conversation, so they really weren't aware of it until it went on the American website?
Yeah, because it was only on the American website that it was being featured. Yeah, so no, there was nothing like that. But I guess they saw it as a great opportunity to not have to sing 5, 6, 7, 8, and give them a couple minutes to do a costume change. So this is the year, like, I think it's like late 99, early 2000, and converting what was called a Swift file, because it was .wsf was the file, and converting one of those into something that can be shown in a concert is not easy. And not only that, I had to convert it from NTSC to PAL, which is, the video formats between the United States and the UK. I think you used PAL in Australia as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I started, and the internet wasn't as powerful as it was back then. So it wasn't like I could just Google and say, hey, how do I turn this? So I was able to export it and get it converted to a movie, but the audio didn't work. So then I had to find a way to go back and pair the audio with it, but have it line up exactly. So finally I did it. And I think that one of the ways I did it was I had to output it from my computer onto a videotape, like a high 8 tape. And then once it's on that, I got it converted to PAL. So I was put in touch with the technical guy who was doing the concert to go over the specs for what they needed, like what size they needed to be in frame rate, etc. So I was able to get it prepared, and I went into my boss and I said, hey, I got this thing pretty much prepared. I said, how are we getting it there? And he's like, you're bringing it there. He goes, we're sending you, we'll fly you over, you'll get tickets for the show. So everything will be, and I'm like, this is awesome. Now I'm going and I'm not having to pay for it. So
We love that.
I go over, I meet the guy, I go to the Zamba UK office, which is in, I think, this place called Willesden in outside of London, or just a suburb of London. And it's in a house, like an old house. It's not even in a office building. But I meet the guy there, and we, exchange. I tell him this. He takes a look and he goes, "I'll give you a call and let you know if there's any issues." And he, let me know everything is good to go. He said there's a meet and greet that if you want to go, he goes, I'll pull you in. So if you want to say hi. So I had prepared some of the Steptoons. I printed them out. I brought them in and had them sign it. They were so excited to see me again. They're saying, wait, you're the guy who did the cartoon too? I said, yeah. They're like, oh my God,
Incestuous.
like this guy's
Can't get rid of me.
unstoppable. Like, yeah, yeah, exactly. So I got to, spend some time with them, on a side note. And actually, while I was there, I was able to interview them separately. Because I asked them, I said, if I could do an interview just to ask them about what they thought about the cartoons and what cartoons they grew up on and everything. And I have a tape of it somewhere, but it's like on a DAT tape and I can't play it. And it didn't come out very well. And we listened to it back in the office and there was no real use for it. So it kind of just sat, you know what, when I get home, maybe I'll dig it up and try to convert it for you. So I I do the interview and then I go to the meet and greet and they're signing all my Steptoons. And I actually had a shirt on that I had put a Steptoons decal on and, was showing it to them and they were loving it. They thought it was great. And the seats that the company had given me were in like the 20th row. So I'm like front and center. So I get a great view of seeing the show and then I get to see my cartoon on the stage, and I'm definitely a little freaked out about that. I'm like, oh my God, like, and people are into it, they're loving
I was
it.
gonna say, what was the reaction around you during that?
People were so into it. I don't think a lot of them had, because they said it was only on the US website, they hadn't seen the cartoon. So
Yeah.
they were like, oh my
What's
God, like
this?
this is awesome. The steps are cartoons, like it was very positive. But I had gotten the program, like I said, from that show. And when I was going through it, I realized that they had thanked me or as the creator of Steptoons in there. And I had no idea, like no one had told me about that. I just kind of like stumbled into that. So I was like, wow, that is just awesome, So I did think like maybe this is the next, maybe there'll be interest in this as a real cartoon, like which
Yeah.
I had always hoped would have been great. Because I think it would have had a kids appeal, but it would also transcend like the band does and appeal to adults as well. You know what I'm saying? They never made enough of a interest in the US. And I never heard anyone from the UK, although they did reach out to me to do the Summer of Love, like which you notice, which is on an enhanced
Yep.
CD, which
Yep.
people are like, what the hell is that? It's like as a screensaver. That's really what it was a downloadable screensaver. So the Christmas one I had done when I heard the Christmas tune, I was like, it would be nice to do like a Steptoons Christmas card. And so I had all the pieces and you know, all the computer files from them being created and all these different things. So I just had to do a little tweaking to put them in winter outfits and then, make that fun little, it's only like 30 seconds at the most, but I enjoyed it.
In the Christmas one, the band ends up with a monkey in a giant snowball passing through the Great Wall of China, Mount Rushmore, and the Taj Mahal. I don't want to get too deep, but what was going on there? What was the inspiration? Why
So,
wasn't Bondi Beach there? Come on.
so I was like, I needed to have something going on that I was like, oh, the snowball's taking a real tour, and I wanted to use identifiable places. So that's, really, I just came up with those places and then I threw the 5, 6, 7, 8 set in as like a throwback to that. And it was really just, I'm a very creative, wacky guy, I'm sure you can understand. And those were the places that kind of came to me.
Can I just ask, because I think one of the things you mentioned it before, and I had always had the assumption that the idea of the Steptoons was for it to be more than what it was. So I assumed that it would have been the pathway for a potential television cartoon or a comic book or something, because I always felt like it wasn't utilized enough. I felt like there was more life to it. So So you're saying there was never any sort of conversations about doing something down that sort of pathway?
Well, so funny enough, like when I want to say in later 2000 or maybe early 2001, Steps came to Jive Records in the US to record in the studio in our building. And I can't remember what they were recording, but it was definitely later
We do.
on.
We could tell you.
I love that. I love that.
It was probably Here and Now and, Happy Go Lucky, those bunch of songs for the Buzz
Happy Go
album.
Lucky, Buzz, and maybe Wouldn't Hurt So Bad. Here and Now was later.
Oh, okay. So obviously, and this is so funny in a way, someone at the international department calls me and they're like, "Hey, Steps is coming in next week." I said, "Yeah, I heard. I'm psyched." And they're like, "Yeah." She goes, "You'll be able to see them." She goes, "Remember, they're here working, recording, so it's not like, you're just going to stand in the corner bothering them." I said, "No, no, no. I know my deal. I understand my position now." But they're like, "We need someone to go pick them up at the airport." And I'm like, "Oh, here we go again." She's like, "No, we have a black limousine to go get them. We just need somebody to go inside and meet them and guide them out to the limousine." And I'm just like, I feel bad in a way. I'm like, no one at the label wants to, like, they're kind of like, "Come on, we're trying to get this band going." Like, you know, so they probably knew I would do it. So I was like, of course I'll do it. So, I met the driver in Manhattan and we drove out. I think it was to JFK Airport. I go inside, I have the information where they're getting off. And I think there might have been a little disappointment on their end when they get off the plane and they're looking, and it's just, I'm like, "Hey," and they're like, "Hey, how's it going, Chris?"
They
And
probably
I'm
thought
like,
you were just there to say hi, didn't realize you were picking them
"Yeah,"
up.
and they're like, "Who's here to meet us?" I'm like, "It's me. I'm gonna take you to the hotel." They're like, "Oh, okay, that's cool." Like I definitely sensed there was a little, just kind of like a little disappointment that there wasn't more of a record company representation for them.
For them, I imagine a year before when they first came, they probably had a bigger reception. So it was kind of a sign that they were less of a priority in the US than they were a year before.
Yeah, it was starting to drift away, definitely. Like, I think Jive US felt they had bigger fish to fry now, and because if you recall, they went to Disney,
Of course. Yep.
and they did that whole appearance
The special,
there,
yep.
and
February 2000.
yes, and you know, that's a huge moment too at Disney with all the kids and everything, and I don't think that made any big hit or anything. So they were starting to feel that it wasn't where they were hoping it would be. But like I said, I was fine, and they were fine. They were comfortable with me at this point. So I remember being in the limo or whatever on the way back to New York City, and two or three of them couldn't get their mobile to work, and I'm like, "Yeah, because you're on the UK. What you have to need to." And I'm like, "Did you sign up for an international plan?" I said, "Because you're gonna need to." And they were like, "No, I'm not sure we did that." And they were trying to get their phones working, and so they was all kind of like little flustered and disappointment in there. And I could sense it, just as like a human emotion thing. But I was totally nice with them. I said to them, "Listen, I live in Manhattan. I'm only like 10, 20 blocks away from the hotel. If you need anything, feel free to give me a call. I'm happy to come provide or whatever. Pizza, good Chinese food, anything, you want." I had never heard of them, but then I saw them later that week when they were at the record company. And I went down to the studio just to say hi and, in between takes and stuff. And, even the engineers and guys knew me, so it was not a big deal. But yeah, I didn't get the same. I felt their energy was a little lower than it had been in previous times.
Was that with Rip Rock and Alex Greggs?
I'm not sure, but I do remember that. You'll appreciate this. There was a couple of the producers and songwriters there, and I forget who was there, but one of the guys said, "Hey," he was talking to the songwriter, said, "Hey, this is the guy that did the cartoon." He's like, "Oh man, I love that cartoon. I think it's amazing." And I said, "Wait, did you write just like the first time?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "I love that song." And so we had this like mutual admiration society going on right there between us. It was kind of fun. I wish I could remember his name. I'm sure you guys can dig it out or whatever. But yeah, so I can't remember the name of any of the engineers or the people who were there. Like Tim Byrne wasn't there for this one. It was somebody different because I would have recognized Tim, but you know.
So you did 5, 6, 7, 8 for like Step One USA, then the tour, and then you were asked to do Summer of Love. You were asked to do the Christmas one. Are there any step tunes in the vault or any songs you half started but never completed?
So I had started working on one for Deeper Shade of Blue. In the links of the stuff I sent you, it's in there.
Yes, you did very kindly.
And it's so I was still tweaking it. Like it wasn't where there wasn't much going on, but like I said, these things were such a pain to animate. It was so hard. And I was trying to think of what to do. And I mean, it's okay. You know, it's another Steptoons. And like I said, it's never been seen. So feel free to show it if you like, you know,
With your permission, we would love to, but yeah, definitely only if you're comfortable for us to. But I know the fans would
absolutely.
love to see something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, it's like a little Easter egg, an unearthed treasure. And, you know, I remember, and after now watching the reunion, thinking like, you know, H sang that song, which was unusual because most of the songs were girl led and stuff. So that's why if you watch the Steptoons, H is the one who comes down separate from the other four because he's singing the main lead. But I didn't go to the trouble of like mouthing him and all that and stuff like that. So yeah, those are the only existing working Steptoons from the time.
For now.
Exactly. Well said, Shane. That's exactly right.
Have you kept up with their comeback at all? Like you did mention that you'd watched the reunion special, but since then, have you sort of followed some of the new stuff they've released?
I have not. I got to admit, I have not. And I knew that there was a Broadway show
Mm-hmm.
because actually on one of my trips to London, I was like, oh, maybe I'll do that. And
When are you going to the UK?
What's that?
When are you going to the UK? What, like in the next few months?
Oh no, this was like like 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh,
Or maybe
okay.
2 years ago. When was the show on Broadway?
The musical's touring at the moment around the UK. It's on a 10-month tour, so there's still another 5 months or so left. So
Hey.
I was like, if you are going back, you should try and see it.
It's a lot of
But it was
fun.
actually on the West End for a while, right? Like it was in the
No,
theater?
not
No.
no,
Oh, it never
Not
was?
yet.
not yet. Hopefully
Not
it will
yet.
be.
So it was always a touring kind of show?
And new shows in the UK tend to do new work, tend to tour regionally first and build up a fan base, and then they transfer to the West End. And so they're in that current regional tour, building up that love and fan base, and we're hoping for a West End transfer. Who knows? Could be announced at Steps 30. I want to take you back to what you've just told us and how amazing this story is. What do you think when you're looking back at it? What part of the story that you think is the most amazing part that still sticks right out for you?
So the thing is for me that for me to be into steps at a time in my life that I was, you know, when I was attending like U2 concerts and all these other bands, for me to connect with them and kind of almost like get a burst of childhood and taught me a lesson like just follow your heart. You know what I mean? Like don't pay attention to anything outside. Like just follow your heart and see where it leads you. And you know, it led me to such an amazing all the experiences of you know meeting them, getting the job in the music industry, like meeting a bunch of amazing people. And it all never would have happened if someone had, you know, detracted me from that, or I didn't have enough confidence in myself to keep, like, I don't care if people laugh at me being into steps. I'm like, I'm into steps, and that's what it is. It's like you take it or leave it, you know? So that's really the lesson that, you know, I always never regret. And I'm so happy that, you know, I had it. And I really appreciate you guys tracking me down because it was a real joy reliving those moments. You know what I mean? Like it was such a great part of my life. Like, you know, being involved with steps like that, I'm sure you could imagine. It's just like it's a dream, right?
But I just want to say, Chris, again, you know, thank you for responding. As I said, we did kind of go down a bit of a rabbit hole to track you down, but I think that hearing your story, and this is why we love doing it, is that when we do track people like yourself down, we know there's a story there beyond what we see, and it's nice to just get a little peek behind the curtain. But also, the Steptoons, they were a small part of the history, but they were part of the history that we've never really understood the story behind it. So it's been really incredible to get that from you.
My pleasure.
That episode was really fun to record. It was so great to chat to Chris about him discovering Steps and creating the Steptoons and everything like that. And I think that David has a run for his money about being the first Steps fan in America. Dave from Chicago, if you're listening, I expect a bitey message after you listen to this.
Yeah, he'll get the boxing gloves out.
Absolutely. Did you boys enjoy doing that? That was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
It was my idea, I think, to be like, we need to find this person, and I sort of left it to Brad because he's the FBI, and just said, I sent you a link, and I was like, find this person, and went down a rabbit hole, but we found him, and I'm so glad we did, because again, there's such a story there, right? That's never been told, and he was really excited that he hadn't spoken about it ever, and it also reignited his love for Steps as well. Absolutely. From him talking to us and the follow-up emails we had back and forth with him. He's now going on a journey and, like, you know, listening to all the newer stuff and getting back into Steps. So that alone, we've converted someone back into the
reconverted them. What I loved about it was the journey that he told us and the similarities we all had with that journey, and discovering Steps at the same time, or being that we're all from not England, like us included. We're not from the UK. He's not from the UK, and just how the joy in his face that you could see that he had, which was really great to see. So yeah,
I'd loved hearing more about, you know, him meeting the band and the random opportunities that he was, you know, in the limo taking them back to the hotel in New York, and, you know, going behind the scenes at the Britney Spears concert. And Shane, I'm sorry, we finally have our answer for the One for Sorrow US video. We've put it to rest. First episode of 2026, it's done. It's marked off.
No Britney in One for Sorrow film clip. Okay.
Is there anyone else you need to hear it from before you agree?
We can just leave it to rest. It's fine. It's fine. We can leave it to rest. Anyway, it's been a great episode and great chat with Chris, and we have more to come for this year, don't we?
Yeah, I'm excited about this year. We've got some really good plans, and there's some stuff we've already done that in the background for later on this year, which we've never done before. So we're really organized this year, and I'm really excited. This is 25 years this year of Gold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's something that we are going to celebrate, because we know how much you all love that era. So we're hopefully doing some special things to celebrate that later in the year.
And if all things are planned correctly, you know, Steps 30 is next year, but we might start hearing rumblings of what it is towards the end of the year. So things might start getting dropped, and I think it'll start happening after the musical. Speaking of which, the musical, it's currently touring across the UK and Ireland until May. So for more information, go to stepsmusical.com. Faye will be touring in Mean Girls the Musical until August. So for more information, go to meangirlsmusical.com. And don't forget to follow us at Glitter Steps Pod on Instagram, X, TikTok, and YouTube, and give us a like, rate, or subscribe wherever you get your podcast fix from. Until then, until the next episode, boys. Lovely to see you.
See you later.
See you soon.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.